Hey everyone, Bondi Finance Guy here. In this video, I show you how I used Airbnb to fast track my financial independent journey. I'll run through the numbers, I'll run through some scenarios. Uh, Stay tuned. If you have any questions, comments, just put them at the bottom. I'll make sure I respond. What I did was a bit unusual, and not a lot of people have probably taken this approach. I think it's an approach now that's probably growing in popularity. Yeah, but stay tuned, and I'll try and show you in as much detail as possible how I did it, and you might be able to take some of these learnings and apply them to your own financial journey. Now, I've tried to include everything in these numbers, and this is one of the ways that I break down a investment opportunity, or how I first evaluate Airbnb when I'm getting a property. I usually break it down into a daily rate, and with that daily rate I will quickly compare it to other properties in a similar area on Airbnb. If I'm looking at a daily rate of say $80 per night, it comes back after I've covered all my costs and everything else, and then I look on Airbnb, I look up Bondi, and I see that there's properties sitting around there for $140 a night. They're getting continually booked out. I know that there's a good chance of some really good profit margins. I also checked out the hotels. I'd keep a keen lookout on what the hotels were doing. There's a couple of major hotels that I looked at. Bondi doesn't have a lot, which is another reason why Bondi, being so popular, doesn't have a lot of hotels as such. So there's a bit of a niche there in this Airbnb market. So I'd look at those hotels, and I'd look at something like what was basically a studio type, a larger size studio apartment. You open room, you might have a king bed in there, you might have two doubles. It's your usual sort of setup. They were going on average for about $220 per night. Down the road, there was the Adena in Hall Street. Very lucky to ever book an apartment in there for under $180 a night, and that's all year round. So you can see here that there's a good opportunity there to make some good profits just by looking at those things. What other people are charging for on Airbnb, what the hotels are charging for. So by working out what my daily cost rate was, and then compare it to sort of the upper end, the hotels and other Airbnbs, you can quickly determine, okay, there's possibly an opportunity here. So just looking through the numbers, and remember, this was all happening in the course of 4 years. So it was 4 years to use all this to get a level of financial independence that I'm currently enjoying at the moment. Now, the first apartment I got, just 200 meters, 250, 300 meters thereabouts from the beach, paid $530 a week. So this is the apartment that started it all. So throw in the utilities, Wi-Fi, pretty important to have Wi-Fi in there. I think the plan was, one of those, between $60 and $70 a month type of plan. I haven't included the cost of furniture because this was my primary residence at the time, so I'd had it nicely furnished already. So it came up to a daily rate of $81.71. Now this apartment became immensely popular. So this apartment would just book out, and it was just continually booked. I did spend a lot of my time in there. It was probably my favorite apartment, the cheapest the cheapest apartment, and also my favorite. So I did spend a lot of time, so that probably brought down the average rate. But the average charge per night, how much I was making, was $95. So a daily profit of $13. Remembering I was spending a fair bit of time in there. I would say that on average, probably make $110 easily a night. and in the summer you make, basically I was making, the equivalent of, uh, for that month it was costing me $2,000, and for January I'm basically making, you make your, the cost of 2,000, I'm sort of making you $5,000-6,000 for that peak period. So in this scenario, the annual profit came in 4,800. What I then went and did is I went and grabbed another apartment. This time it was a 2-bedroom apartment. Another advantage of this one was a 2-bedroom apartment with a car park, and that was $720 a week. Again, utilities were pretty similar. It's basically $2.50 a day for electricity, and then a little bit for gas, etc. The advantage of doing the rental is in New South Wales that you aren't charged for any water usage. The landlord pays the water usage, so really your only expenses are your rent, your Wi-Fi, and your utilities. You're not having to pay rates. Again, that's handled by the head leaseor or the landlord. They cover all that. And the other cost I've got in here is furniture. Now, I went through a scenario of just buying bits of the furniture, but just for ease, I ended up going to a business called Rental Centre. It's quite a few, and hired my furniture there. They don't really have any locked-in contracts. You just get the furniture delivered. I think you need to hold it for a minimum of maybe 3 months, and then you can just return your furniture if you don't want it anymore. You just ring them up, give them a month's notice, they'll come and collect it. So for something like this that I was doing, it was pretty convenient to get the places fitted out. Didn't affect my cash flow. I didn't have to come up with all the furniture up front. So that's just a nice little tip. But anyway, it does push up your daily rate because you're having to recover $7 or such a day for furniture. So the cost of this one was $115, or basically $116 per day. And the average charge out rate I ended up receiving, on average, I did spend a little time in this apartment during the year, was $128 per night, which is good value. This was a 2-bedroom apartment, plus it had a fold-down couch in there, so you could easily accommodate 6 people. But I had plenty of families go through this apartment. Groups of friends, that type of thing. There's some real good calendar dates in Bondi, some really popular periods, not just January. People travel in for the City to Surf fun run, which is the world's biggest fun run. People travel in for Sculptures by the Sea, so there's always events in, and there's always traveling in. And also because Bondi is so close to Sydney, I would show up in the Sydney listings, so a lot of people coming to Sydney would book my place, not specifically for Bondi, but for Sydney. So annual profit there was, again, $4,000. Now, this is where I went a bit big scale. There was a new development down on Campbell Parade, right opposite the beach. It was a whole brand new apartment building that had gone in. I picked up on a lease from the landlord was a Chinese gentleman. He'd bought the property as an investment. He lives in China, and he was happy for me to manage that property and put it on Airbnb. So a really good arrangement there. One, if you are looking to do this, that's possibly the type of landlord you need. Someone who just wants to really have, maybe they're holding the property for the long term. They're not that concerned whether the property is being held empty or it's full. That's not their real concern. What their real concern is that you just look after the place, really. So you can see that that one went really well. So that really popular again. Annual profit, heading up to $9,000 profit per annum. I didn't stay in that apartment too much just because this is one of the ones I really wanted to tick over. Did stay there on City to Surf weekend, had friends up from Melbourne, took over that apartment, and we also would usually keep one of the other apartments as well for that period. So again, there was periods during the year where, in these numbers where the apartment just wasn't available, but I haven't really normalized that. So there was definitely more upside in these numbers. Now, the fourth and last apartment I got for this scenario was one in North Bondi. Probably a little bit more out of the way than these other three apartments that were in that Bondi Beach area. And this one didn't perform as well. There were some complications with this one. It had a very complicated car parking situation where it was basically you would drive your car into a lift, which would take you down to your car park. It was a very fancy property, but I did have some issues with that car lift. Occasionally, I had a guest get stuck in the car lift. They dropped the fob. Had a car actually damage part of the lift system. So yeah, there was a few issues, but that was a great apartment. But just being a little bit more out of the way of Bondi, it wasn't as attractive as some of the other apartments that I had. So you can see that's pretty much affected in the daily profit on that one. There was periods there where it wasn't booking out as well as I thought. I could have done a lot of things to promote it a bit better, and I think over time, it may have found its niche, but that was definitely probably the one that underperformed the most, just based on location. So what I ended up doing after 2 years of not paying rent and pocketing the money, after year 2, saved up $38,000. Now what I ended up doing with that $38,000 is using that as a deposit to buy a studio apartment in St Kilda. So you can see here the cost of the studio apartment was $205,000. It being used already for student accommodation. Students would pay about $250 a week for that apartment. And when I first got it, there was actual student in there paying $250. So I put down my deposit. After legals, etc., I had to put a little bit out of my own pocket, not just these savings. Loan $164,000. The interest rate for this actual mortgage was 4.09, reasonably okay. So I've just broke down that interest into a weekly repayment of $128.99. So we rolled this one into the portfolio. So we had a monthly rent, $128.99, utilities again $3.50, Wi-Fi, cost of furniture per day. Being a studio apartment, didn't need a lot of furniture. Very, very cheap daily rate, and average charged out rate was $69. So making that $42 a day profit for annual profit of $15,000. Tying this into the portfolio of the 5 properties, now up to $34,000 per annum profit just off these properties. And again, did a similar thing after 2 years. So this is year 4 of the program. Had $68,000. Took that $68,000, 20% deposit, into a St Kilda. This time I've got down St Kilda studio, but this was actually a St Kilda 1-bedroom apartment with a car park. So picked this one up for $320 or just under $320,000. Got the 20% deposit, loan of this amount. Again, the weekly repayment, $197, interest only. There's obviously some principal that gets paid off in that as well. So you can see by using all these properties, I was actually able to roll the profits into 2 properties. A St Kilda studio and a St Kilda 1-bedder. Keep in mind that at no stage did I really have to pay rent in Bondi. So all these Airbnbs had paid my rent. They put money into my pocket that I then took and bought a studio apartment and a 1-bedroom apartment in St Kilda. Now the reason I went to Melbourne is in terms of buying property. Sydney was just so expensive to go and get a loan and all that type of thing. Just it was really prohibitive. Coming from Melbourne, I knew Melbourne pretty well, and also knew there was probably a good opportunity to make some good profits in Melbourne on Airbnb. I knew some people who had, through my Airbnb experience, that I'd got in touch with that were making really good money. So now, even if I was to give up all these Bondi apartments and just focused on these 2 apartments here, the 2 St Kilda apartments, I would be, after all expenses, we've got your utilities, your Wi-Fi, furniture, bringing in almost $36,000 per annum. Again, none of this has come out of my pocket. As you can see, I took a pretty simple approach there of basically leasing properties, listing them on Airbnb, taking the profits, purchasing property that I then in turn put on Airbnb. I believe you can probably carry on that type of scenario indefinitely. I think that there's the demand there to grow that and get a series of I guess leases that you put on Airbnb. You take the cash, you buy property. Once you know what you're doing, the whole thing's sort of speeds up. Once you know how to scale it, you have your back office in place, you know what's involved. It's something you can definitely do. It was a lot of hard work at first, but after a while I couldn't believe how easy it was. But you do have to keep on top of a lot of things.